all set.
All right, I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Brookfield Board of Finance for Tuesday, March 5th. We'll open with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comment, there is none. So, Steve, you want to
Sure.
open up with what you have?
Right. I won't take too long. The Board of Selectmen met a number of times. We met with most of the departments and went through their budgets. As you can see from the budgets, in most of our departments, there weren't a lot of changes from last year. We did vet some of the numbers we went through, dug in, went through a lot of different things. Can we just go to the next page? Maybe next page. Here's the overall budget as we had it. That's going to be changing based on some information that's come in today on health insurance, which went down. Marcia will give you the details on that. It went down on both sides, the school and thing. The overall levy is at 3.80%, right? So I got that number right.
3.85.
3.85. Boy, that is fuzzy. And we think that's reasonable. The town expenses went up 4.5. The schools went up 5.29 in case for people who are listening. Obviously, we're taking on the debt for the new school. That's about $1.1 million, right? Additional. And capital, which we've gone over a number of times. We do have some increases in revenues. Our fees for increase, well, we'll go through it. Why don't we just go to the next page? Our status quo budget increase is 1.52%. And public safety, in the past, we've put on new police. This is the second half of a new officer, second half of a new SRO, the second half a new ASSO. We were using ARPA money. We're moving back into the budget on those. We increased the administrative officers in the police. The police did ask for one new additional police officer to get the budget to a level that we were comfortable with. We agreed to that. They made a good argument. You're going to be talking to the police yourselves. But we said, why don't we hire that person in January? So we have a half year's expense. Gives us time to roll into a full year's expense next year. We did have a police officer this week who resigned. It was a new police officer. He'd been on duty for about 3 weeks. And he made a decision that being a police officer was not for him. He made that decision. We accepted it. We obviously wish he would stay with us. He's a good guy. But when they make a decision like that, we want police officers who truly, truly want to be in the job. I think we're going to continue to see this in our police department. We have seen it in years past. We have guys who are a member of the National Guard. They get called up to duty. We get guys that go on extended absences for health or other reasons. We are having a growth in the number of people in town. We haven't increased the police force in at least 8 years that I'm aware of, the number of officers, though our population has increased. And our population has changed a little bit. Remember, we have more development along Federal Road. We have more apartments and condos, and that's going to continue. There are just about 400 new units going up over the next year and a half. So that's going to put an increased pressure on our police department. So we thought that was a good thing. Obviously, you'll have a discussion with that. We have to upgrade our tasers. If you remember last time we got those with a grant. Did I get that right?
I can't remember if it was a grant, but we got them as a capital item, as a one-time, and now
Right.
they're moving to a subscription like all the
Yeah.
other police equipment.
Yeah, all of the providers of tasers are just going to a subscription model. You buy them, they maintain them, they keep them. Every 5 years, they give you new ones. I don't know what they do with the old ones, though. Axion, the Axion storage for the body cams, we had originally thought to save money, we would need X amount of storage. That has turned out to not be correct. So the least expensive way we can keep the storage, and remember, we have to keep some of these things for years and years and years and years, is to go to unlimited storage. The police social services liaison is $50,588. This has proved to be an incredibly good investment. I can show you some data that The number of calls our fire, EMS, and police are making to certain locations has gone down by a factor of 30 or 40. Instead of being at one location once a week, they no longer go there in a couple cases. So our liaison has done a great job in freeing up police and fire and EMS to do the things that we really, really want them to do. I mean, it's okay, but if somebody falls in their house once a week, should our EMS people be answering that call? And our social service liaison has done an incredibly good job of finding resources for people to take that burden off of our emergency services. Yeah,
Can I just add that
Sure.
that's half a year, that it doesn't say prior commitment because we never committed to keep it on. It was a decision going forward,
Mhm.
but ARPA will pay for that position until December 31st. So that is half a year's salary and benefits.
correct. And what we want to do is just make it a full-time job. Every department that I've talked to thinks that he's doing a great job. And then we have turnout gear, which has to be changed, it has to be updated, has to be turned in. We're, work with the volunteer fire company, they have more insurance on their vehicles, insurance goes up. And then the EMS, we put a contingency in, and we're gonna have a further discussion on this with the fire company of $119,000. As you know, last year, the Center Fire Company brought their EMS services in-house. And as part of that, they've hired managers, 8 full-time EMTs, I think 11 or 12 part-time EMTs at quite an expense. And when they did that, they told us that the expenses wouldn't change that much, but they have. So we took $119,000 out of their budget. We gave a 3% increase, which is more than most departments, and took $119,000 out of that request to have further discussions. They were getting more information for us in more detail. I think it deserves a more detailed, nuanced discussion.
We put it in contingency.
Yeah, I said that, put it in contingency. Culture and recreation, Laura, who's here tonight, made a very good argument to the Board of Selectmen that she could use an additional maintainer. She has a list of all the things she's now doing. Maintaining the Still River Greenway, maintaining the streetscape in downtown, a lot of different things that her department is doing that they never did before that requires time and people. So she made a good argument for adding personnel and cut the overtime a little bit. IT restructuring, we'll have a discussion about that. My driver there was simply that we now have, 4 years ago, our IT director retired, Damin, very good IT director, she retired, and at the time, we made a decision not to replace her and to have her assistant Dan take her place as the director IT for the town. Damin at the time said to us, I don't think we need 2 people here, right? We said, we're gonna look at this, right, see if that works, see if it makes sense to have one person. Again, over time, just like with Parks and Rec, the onus on the job, the amount of things that needed to be done, the amount of work that needed to be done, the number of attacks that are coming, the cybersecurity that has to be kept up has grown, and the number of people hasn't. Last year we had in the budget $15,000 to hire some additional staff to help Dan. But my driver on this isn't just that. My driver is, if Dan leaves or Dan gets sick for 4 weeks, there's no one. There's no one. I know Eric over in the schools would obviously help us. They would come over and help us, but they don't know our systems intimately. They're not super familiar with everything that we do. We need some bench strength. You need more than one person there. So John Baril and I had been talking about this years ago. Just like we merged the purchasing department, we've got a single purchasing department. We're hoping that what we can do is have one IT department for both town and the schools. Eric, the head of IT for the schools, would be the overall head of IT. He would handle budgets, long-range planning, policies, reporting to all the boards, doing all of that thing. Dan would continue to do what he's doing, and we'd pull that budgeting and high-level stuff out. And then what we originally were thinking is having an IT tech support person, a full-timer, at around $50,000 a year. We just looked at it and it just was too expensive. It was just too big a change. So we changed that to a part-time IT tech support. That person would be changing ink cartridges, hooking up computers, doing simple maintenance, things like that, and begin to learn some of our systems and stuff like that, more of a lower level person for 26 hours a week. Do that for a year and see how that works. And that would give us redundancy with Eric knowing our system, learning our system. Dan would begin to learn some of the school systems, some of their people begin to learn ours. I think it's a win all the way around, given the cost. And in this day, I know I've gotten so far, since December, 12 hard phishing attacks that have gotten through all of our security. And you have to pay attention to these things, and you need people that are very competent. Dan and Eric both are. So that's one of the biggest change. On the Public Works, there is a new cell tower on Vale Road. Our new radio system is planned to go on that. This would be the rent for 7 months for that cell tower. We think will go up on that tower end of the year, so we put 7 months rent. Shall we move to the next? I'm sorry. Where are we? Oh, this is on the Board of Ed budget. I think you guys have seen a lot of this. They made a really good presentation. I will not go through all the permutations of it. We just wanted to have it here so you would understand it. I know Glenn has some questions on a couple of areas. I think Brian has some questions on a couple of areas. We do have good news here, like the health insurance today, instead of 5%, it's going to be 2%. That's a good cut for both sides. They have found some more savings that we've described throughout, where the Board of Selectmen, took $575,000 out of the Board of Ed budget. We had recognized about $350,000 in cuts where they had made changes since they submitted their budget 2 months ago, where they found savings. And now that's up to about $450,000 total savings. So we would be asking the Board of Ed.
It's not really savings, it's adjustments.
Actually, it's not savings, it's just clarifying, good point, Glenn, clarifying what the number is. Like health insurance was put in at 5%, now it's 2%.
We've not removed any positions,
No.
not removed any books, not removed anything. What this is just strict.
Right.
We estimated 8%, it's now 2%. That's
Right.
not that's an adjustment.
Yes, you know what, you're right, that's a better way to put it. It was an adjustment to reflect the updated information, and we've done that. So right now, the Board of Ed with the Board of Selectmen budget we're looking to ask them to cut just about $100,000 out of their $53 million budget. That's 1/20 of 1%.
But now that you're on this, with these adjustments, you made a cut of 575.
Right.
There was adjustments in there. Are you now absorbing these adjustments into your cut, or are you decided you're gonna, because basically then you didn't reduce anything. Your 575 number is a net zero reduction, it's just an adjustment.
So 475 right now is an adjustment, and
Okay.
100,000 is a cut,
Okay, thank you.
right?
for clarifying.
From what we can recognize to date. Okay, that's the biggest
Steve,
change.
you said
today.
that the benefits came in low, 2 versus 5. Are you gonna lower the DOE budget for
Yep.
that? Okay, so
Yep.
that won't be to solve.
Yep, you'll see that tonight, you'll see that.
As we go through, Brian, we make adjustments, Marcia tallies for us, and we see the total come up for us.
The official budget the Board of Selectmen sent you will not change, but where you would update as you go along here as we get new information, and we'll update that for you. It should be noted, we're not going into the schools and telling them how to run the schools, what teachers to hire, where to hire them, do that. That's not our job. I think everybody's been very clear on that. But we will adjust their budget if we see where they get savings, right? They don't have the expense that they thought they were gonna have. Here's a summary of the capital budget. I think everybody's pretty familiar with this. We're gonna be using reserves of $1 million, purchases of $1,690,000. Remember, the paving is in there, $1,500,000 at cash. We're financing that partially with year-end 24 revenue, right? $1,127,000. and we can have any further discussions on capital. The capital committee did, in a very short time, I think, a really good job at looking at capital. They really did. Brian was part of that. Brian, do you agree they?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
You tweaked a few things back into it, but other than that.
We kind of threw you into the fire there, into the pot, but I think it was helpful to have Brian there, to have somebody from this board sitting there, seeing their thinking and their process. I think they did a really good job. We made a couple small changes to what they had, but primarily left it almost exactly the same. Marcia, can we go to the next? And then revenue, I'm gonna let Marcia go over revenues. She knows this backwards and forwards. Can do it quicker and shorter than I can.
All right, so when we start with the revenues, we have to start with the assessments. The increase in real estate was 0.78%, that versus 1.03% last year. So you'll notice on almost every number, last year's increase in assessments was higher than this year. Personal property up 8.4 compared to 8.86 last year. Motor vehicles was the exception, 5.4 compared to 5.26 last year. In total, our revenues went up 0.78%. And we used to look at it and say, oh, let's assume that they're going to be an average of 0.94. That was a few years ago. And now the average without a reval year is 1.1. So they went up less than average. And we talked to the assessor about that, and generally, it's not a surprise to her that it would be the year after a reval, we would see a higher increase, and then the next year it would slow down. So it's not a straight line before and after, or the non-reval years. And I tried to show that line on this graph. And I cut out the reval years just because it skewed the numbers so much.
So where's the line?
So the line is here, that here's the increase, and it's about the lowest increase that we've had in the last few years, that as far as property taxes. But holding true to what she said, here is the increase this year, and I wish I could see it a little better. Here's the increase after the last reval, and here's the increase. I believe this was a reval year, but we are still at 0.78%, and making do with that.
I'm surprised that with the development that's going on, the trend wasn't changed.
It's not going up.
That's surprising.
I think we're gonna see, though a lot of those developments are gonna hit our books next year.
Are we guessing or do we know?
No, we
Because
know, like,
I gotta be honest with you, I got asked that last night. I was out with about 10 Brookfield residents, and they asked, why isn't our revenue line increasing with all this development, all these apartments? And that graph shows it's not.
Well, but we're talking about, $350 billion or whatever the huge number is, that, so it
we have
takes
a
a lot to,
$3.5 billion base.
it takes a lot to move it.
So then you just moved it from 1.03 down to 7.8. So what moved it in that direction? If it takes a lot to move it, how did we move from where we were from last year?
She was saying that was a leftover from the reval year, that, from adjustments on reval.
Okay, because if you look at that graph, there's movement through the whole graph. It's so things move it.
Yeah.
I mean, that graph is not a straight line, correct? It starts here, it
That's
goes
correct.
up, it goes way down, it goes up. So it moves in the course. So I guess the question is, why isn't these buildings moving it in there?
They would move in, but you would not see a huge increase on a $3.5 billion base. 1% is 35 million. That's, 2 projects. So, and those projects, if you see them, they're not completed yet, right? So we can do taxation. If a project takes a long time, we can go in, assess them, okay, you're 40% finished, we can tax you at 40% of the final value. But they slowly creep up.
So how many projects do we have in that bucket? And then how many projects do you see over the next 2 years being fulfilled? I mean,
So you have a schedule in your book
Okay,
of the
thank you.
projects that are coming in the next, I think it was 4 years.
but not the assessments on them, right?
His rough values of what
Based on
they're
the building
expecting
permit
on them.
value,
Okay.
that's what's in your books.
All right.
And we then go in and obviously value them.
And the land use department has established a bigger schedule, that's just one condensed for the budget purposes. It's after building permits in the revenue section,
So
green tabs in the front.
I had asked Greg to update it. What do we actually have in the pipeline right now that is being built? And what is planned over the next few years? And I got that this afternoon. I'll shoot it all to you tonight. You can look at it just a little more updated. And it's broken down to in progress versus planned.
But there is a master schedule of all the development and it's just not in this book.
Oh, fair enough.
So it would have been great if the real estate, the increase, the higher the increase, the better it is for us. That as far as tax collections, and all of these we review with the department head. So we reviewed this with the tax collector. That 1 mil is $2.8 million, and the average collection of the last 5 years was 99.08%. We had taken last year, we didn't use the 2022 number because we thought it was an outlier, but no, it doesn't really look like an outlier anymore. And we're still projecting the 2024 year to be over budget, so we didn't take that out this year.
So what'd you use this year?
99.08.
Perfect.
And it was like 98.36, I think, last year. But that's just an average. We can calculate the grand list times the mill rate, and then times the collection rate. Back taxes we used to take a flat number, and then last year, because the receivables went down so low with COVID and everyone refinancing, that we couldn't, or we didn't think it was responsible to take a flat number, so we did it as a percentage of the prior year. So again, looking at the 5-year averages, and you've got the data that this was developed off in your books, it looks like we're collecting about 52% of the prior year end's receivables, and so we estimated that as of June 30th year ends receivables times 52%. Supplemental taxes, again, 5-year average, we budgeted 740. That it did bump up during COVID. I don't know why everybody needed new cars that year, but I guess they couldn't go anyplace, so they bought a car. Interest and fees, again, based on the balance of the receivables, a 5-year average, 31.5% of the prior year's receivables. Telecommunications tax, that was just updated on Friday. That's SNET and AT&T, and instead of paying every town individually for their wires, that they pay the state, and the state allocates it out. We got the listing for the allocations for this year on Friday, so that they're due April 1st. We had $38,000 in the budget for the 2024 year, and we learned that SNET did quite a bit of work, and so it's their personal property tax, and so the total went up to $70,000 for this year. And it would make sense that it's going to stay about $70,000 because they continued. The first yellow line is what was the original, this yellow line here was what was our original budget, thinking that it was depreciating. Instead,
That was last year's budget.
that was
The
the
current year.
2024 budget. Instead, 2024 is going to be 70, so we're going to get more money than we had expected. The 2025 budget and the selectmen's budget, they didn't have this information then, was 48,000. We're gonna talk later about we should increase that.
So before you get to that, I understand that, but what drives it, like from year 213, what drives it down to, or 211, what drives it down to 218 or 2020? What drives it to go down instead of
They-
stay
like-
maintained?
They get to depreciate it
Yeah.
So that number is gonna drive down then
over time.
over time, just
Right.
like the 2011 drove down.
So you can see, it's pretty clear, they didn't do really any investments for the last 7 years. And you
Yeah.
can see slowly it went down, and last year, they made the investment. One of the questions I have, has everybody seen the Frontier trucks the last 2 years, all over town, putting in fiber?
Yeah.
We don't see that. We looked at it today, SNET is in there, Verizon's in there, AT&T is in the list a little bit, a teeny bit, but we don't see Frontier, so we're gonna do a little research there. I gotta believe all that fiber is worth a fair bit of money, and why are we not seeing it?
But we're wondering if,
It might be, they did it for SNET, or SNET did it for them.
Right.
We're just gonna do a little more research.
So then basically what we're gonna see is next, even though I agree you wanna increase 2025, it's still gonna be on the downslope a little bit from this
That
year
would be my opinion, yeah.
because of depreciation.
Yep.
And then the following year it'll be down a little bit more.
Yep.
Right?
unless somebody, because there's
Unless new
five,
stuff happens.
yeah,
right?
there's
that's something
5
new
different
happening.
entities that are included in this. Happen to be SNET that increased this year, AT&T, and then CoreLogic maybe are. They're all included in this calculation. SNET is the biggest, so, but some of the others could also put in new stuff that, the intergovernmental revenue, it's based on the governor's budget. It may change after the appropriations committee and then the final budget, but this is the latest that we have now. This is the Board of Ed side. There's a bump that they gave us more education cost sharing in the governor's budget. And then if we look at, be able to see these numbers, that our actual this year is higher than our budget, and it was last year too, and the reason for that is this municipal revenue sharing grant. There's a number of things going on with that. One, we think based on reading the statute that it was so high in the last 2 years, which were the only 2 years it was funded, is that there is a section in there that they were transferring money from the transportation fund at the state into this. And so that's why it might be so high. The second thing is CCM, and I checked with them again this year, that they're saying do not put this in your budget, that it's not stable enough to put in the budget, that and then the other part of it is, let's say they do fund it, we may not get any money, that because we may, if your budget goes up higher than 2.5% or the cost of living, then you start losing this money if yours goes up higher. They just came out with the cost of living, what they're going to use last week. Right now, we're under that. It was 6.27.
I thought 6.51%.
Something like that, yeah.
Is what they're saying. So we're good there. But it's something we have to watch in the future, because if inflation gets around 3% and our budget is 3.5%, we could lose some of the funding from this. It hasn't been a problem over the last few years because they haven't been funding us, so we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, but so we didn't put it in the budget, but we do have that extra money because we don't want to be irresponsible and too conservative. We do have that 200,000 still in the budget that we'll talk about in a minute for something that we just don't know about yet.
It's your line, the Dan line.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't like it when we put 100,000 in.
I didn't like it. I hate woohoo.
Double it.
And we were still short by
Yeah. So the building permits that, as we talked about, Greg keeps the statistics, and he's got a schedule in here, but he's got a lot more schedules that show that. And we look at that, the building permits, we look at the, which are really the only ones that make much of a difference in land use. The building permits are into two categories. One is the recurring things that are under 25,000. If something's over 25,000, we pull it out for a separate identification. So we ask two things. One is, where do you think we're going to be on building permits? We look at the average, we look at the recent. And this was his estimate of 450. And then we look at the large known fees that, and it was estimated at 160,000. And again, a lot of that you can't really tell because developers are notoriously, delayed and some come in that we didn't even know were on the radar as far as building permits. So the timing of all that, it's hard to tell. But that's what's included in the assumptions in this budget.
An example of that is 777 Federal Road. Now they've got the fence around it. And that was approved 7.5 years ago. And they were gung-ho, and nothing happened. Now they pulled the demo permit for that property, but it's been 7 years. Now, we could have planned back then to have a building permit of about $100,000. So these sometimes are volatile. You think they're going, so you make your best guess as to which projects are going to move forward and which are not.
So then what's in your budget is the 450 plus the 160?
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Town clerk fees, it's really the conveyance tax, and again, we review it with each department, make sure they're comfortable with the numbers, try to not let them be too conservative. And so we based that, we looked at the average of the last 5 years, but some of that was COVID, so we discounted it and came up with what we think is a reasonable number. Interest income, we have a cash flow worksheet that shows the cash flow for all of the major funds. That the cash flow is going down. We don't have the CLES money in there, so the cash flow is going down. And we also look at the interest rates, and they're projected to go down as well. And so that is why the interest is less next year than it was this year.
So that's your interest income that you have there,
Correct.
1.2 to 1.3,
Yep.
and that's based on the 4%, which you have on your graph.
It is, we started at 4%. I think that 4% is an average. It changes as we mapped out every time the feds meet and took it down a little bit, because the latest that we saw at the time in January when we did this is that they were going to start lowering it a little bit at each meeting. This one is still a work in progress. I thought I might have some answers this morning after last night's meeting, but I don't. This is rental income. This is not the rental income for the conservation properties go into a separate fund. This is the rent for Silvermine and the HRRA that go into the general fund, and it's just based on P times Q, as Bob likes to say. And then the cell tower that is already existing. We don't have any money in here from a cell tower that's been talked about at the meetings by the high school. But that's what's in red, is if that was approved or denied, I could take the red off. But right now, it's still a work in progress of what's happening there.
What effect would that have on the budget either way? I mean, like, what time frame? Is that like coming in 6 months from now, a year from now? What do you?
It would probably be a year to a year and a half before they actually, if we approved it in the next month and a half, 2 months, it would be a year to a year and a half before they're finished constructing it.
Not even this budget.
And then we would,
Right.
the minute they get their CO, we would start collecting rent. So I don't think this, even if we did it today, would affect next year's budget,
Not enough.
except
Except
Yeah.
expenditure.
Except if we approved a tower on town hall property, wherever, they have made an offer to give us the top of that tower for free instead of $3,000 a month. And they would lower the rent on Vale Road from $3,000 to $1,000 a month.
Otherwise,
right
we'd
now,
have a
that is
cost
not
then.
up.
Otherwise, we'd have a cost that we gotta build it.
Yeah, right now, we're gonna have a cost next year about $21,000 to rent that cell
But
tower.
that was a known cost, forget this tower.
A known
This was
cost, it's in the
for
budget.
prior year,
Yep.
okay.
And once there's an agreement, if there's an agreement reached for the newest proposed cell tower, they would immediately reduce Vale Road?
Yes.
That's if it goes on town property.
Right.
But that's really gonna be a minuscule effect, that can be contingency if we had to,
Yeah.
correct?
Not a huge amount. Though, over time, if we decide not to put it on town property, they are asking for $3,000 a month
Right.
rent for each tower.
It's a big number,
Times
but
two
not in the
towers.
budget that we're gonna be dealing with.
Exactly.
That's
Not
all
in
I
this
wanna say
budget,
is,
and it will probably be in next year's budget.
right, that's what I'm saying, in this budget, we're not gonna get hit either way.
No,
We're not
we
gonna
have
gain
7
revenue.
months of Vale Road in this budget.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The
Yeah.
new tower's not gonna hit us either
Nope.
way, whether we're
Either
paying
way.
for it or we're gaining money. It's
Right.
not affected in this budget,
No, it is not.
unless it's tail end,
Yeah, and that's,
and then it'll be minor,
it
whichever
will be
way it
teeny.
goes. Okay.
And then we have other revenue. We have miscellaneous revenue that we've put in as $250,000. 200,000 of that is that, because we don't want to be too conservative on the revenue, so 200,000 is, we don't know where it's gonna come from, but we think that there's gonna be more revenue. We have other things that come in that we don't know about. Karma sometimes pays us a rebate on our insurance. That's been from 30,000 to 50,000 in like the last 5 years. This year it was 0. The 2023 year it was 0. And we also have things like we had over $100,000 one year on partnership transfer taxes. That's like a conveyance tax, except you transfer the partnership instead of the real estate. So that is in here at 250. Interfund transfers at the, I should have updated this, that at the time we did a water assessment on Candlewood Lake Road for the school. The school building project paid us $320,000. So we're taking that 320 and we're moving it into the general fund to cover each year for the first few years of assessments. During the selectmen's meeting, they asked if we reduce that instead of try and wean ourselves down. So there's 300,000 in there. Instead of transferring 55 and having a net 0, could we start to have it affect the budget and only transfer 45? And so we did make that adjustment in the selectmen's, and I just didn't make that adjustment on this slide. But so there's 45,000 coming in from another fund to help fund the water assessment. And that 300,000 that was in the CLES budget was the money that they had budgeted for building a well that they didn't have to build because we have public water now. Asset disposition.
Well, before you go any further on that, what if that project overruns? What are you gonna do then?
well,
Because right now, it's gonna overrun.
You think it's gonna overrun? The last I heard is they're comfortably under budget on the CLAS.
Okay. I heard different.
On
Okay.
his report last week to the Board of Ed, he was saying that they were coming in under, and we've been meeting with them.
Yeah.
That, So
We haven't
at
heard anything
1.2.
about being over budget.
So what are
We
you
would
gonna
have
be
to,
under?
if it went over budget, one, they would have to come to the town and ask for more money and tell us why they needed that
But we're
money.
taking 320 here from the school project and we're dispersing it to operating.
This was already given over to us. This is funds that have already, part of the existing budget. They spent this money and given it to the town because of the well.
We didn't put a well in.
No, it would have cost them 300,000 to put the well in. Instead of doing that, they gave us 300,000 to offset the water line. Does that make sense? Did I say that right, Marcia?
We have talked with them that, and every time we've talked to them, that, they've talked about 1.2 million in one of the contingencies that, and we did say, okay, if all that gets used up, what can you do to reshuffle things so we come in under budget? And at that time, they weren't worried about that.
We'll ask again, though.
No, I
That would be
heard
really
$2
concerning.
million worth of dirt was an issue or something, removal
Yeah.
of dirt.
That is in the budget now, but apparently it was not quality dirt. Asset disposition, 20,000 is what we put in the budget when we sell old vehicles and things. And then use of fund balance that last year we had bond proceeds that we used that were in our fund balance. And essentially what we've been doing is using them based on the expiration dates. And so this year we have to use the ARPA money by December 31st. So that'll all go in the budget. And the next set we have to use next year are more bond proceeds. I think they're 442,000 that are expiring in the 2026 budget. And you have a schedule of that in your books. And then there is an opioid grant out there that we've been collecting. It's got about 30,000 in. We'll collect 8,000 or 9,000 a year for the next
10
10 to
I think
15
10 or
years.
15
That
goes down every little bit.
and that'll go against the liaison, the police social services liaison, that as a qualified use of that grant. All right.
This is complicated.
This is
I always
the-
get
this is
lost
what
in
I've
the
been-
spreadsheet.
what
I need a
I've been
simpler
waiting for.
spreadsheet.
All right, and you have it in your books, but this is updated.
Where is it in the
to-
book?
It's in the miscellaneous revenue.
Yeah,
I wasn't looking for it.
I need it
All right.
simplified.
The old people sit right in front.
Start making them shadow.
That,
When you what?
No, you're
Okay.
all right, so this is different than the one in your book, because I updated this to the February numbers. That, this is what we've been calling pockets of money that we've been using to offset the we've been using it to offset the debt bubble, and then we're gonna have to use it to wean ourselves off as well. So this is the, as of June 30th, 2023, and all these numbers agree to our financial statements, that we've got money that's in capital non-recurring, and those are premiums at the top, are bond premiums, that they all have an expiration date, that, and so you can see us using those and bringing them down. That's the 442 I just talked about.
That's the one for not this proposed budget, the following year's
Correct.
budget.
Yep, we also have fund balance not yet allocated to projects. That was money that either is, the project was closed and we had extra money, or in the COVID year, we transferred money over there to help us cover the debt bubble. And that started at $1.4 million. That we closed a project, some projects for 81,000 during this fiscal year. But we're going to do some pickleball courts for 100,000. So the projection is, and it'll change a little, by June 30th of 2024, we'll have about the same, $1.4 million. And none of that is being used in this budget, just again, because we have to use the ARPA money. ARPA that we had, $5 million is what they gave us. We had some stuff for lost revenue, 2.2 million in lost revenue. We had other allocations as of June 30th of 2023 that hadn't been spent yet. That those are things like this liaison, there's some stuff for the fire departments that will all be spent by the due date. So that's what we had in the last audit. We're projecting that this is what we spend this year, or at least by December of 2024. So we would have, and of the lost revenue, we use some in the 2024 budget. So we
This
have
current budget.
this current budget. So we'd have $2 million left, and we're using all of that in next year's budget, in the 2025 budget, because it has to be used by December 31st, 2024.
So we have to
That,
do
and
that.
that was our plan all along.
That it was our plan all along, that we didn't know what year and stuff. We've been jiggling with that every year, is trying to figure out what keeps the curve the flattest, but it has always been our plan to use that, yes, for this purpose.
Not only what keeps the plan, the curve the flattest, is what we can utilize the next year to continue this, or
Correct.
to wean, like you say. So it's not a matter of it just fits, it was a matter of planning it to control it and to wean.
Yep. And then this last section,
Marcia, just because you switched fiscal to year end for a second. So the 1.3 million is what we're using of ARPA this fiscal year, is that correct? 133?
so
$2
there's
million.
two parts of it.
The current one, we're not the budget one.
So in this current year, that we're using as lost revenue, 161,000. We'll just transfer that from the ARPA fund into revenue in the general fund. And then these are projects. The second line down are projects that we're spending money on. That I think the big expense this year was was it an ambulance or a fire truck that we spent in the fall, 660,000. I think it was an ambulance. That so these are just a total of all the projects.
Yeah, my question is, when I look from a year-to-year perspective, fiscal year-to-year, does it say that our ARPA spending is going up by about 700,000? Or is it because you have year-end, which is a fiscal year, it could be something different?
So
If it's not, then we'll take it offline.
that it could have gone up, and so this was the value there. So if we had 3 million there and we had 1.1 left, oh, I hate napkin math. That's 2 million that we must have spent in the prior year.
Last year, but the current year that we're in right now, isn't that saying we're gonna spend 1.3?
Yes, we are.
Okay, next year, the budget we have going on is gonna be 2, so from a year-to-year perspective, we're spending 700,000 more.
True,
But we had
but
to.
not in the
No,
general
it's good, I'm
fund.
just saying,
Yeah,
when
this is a have
we
to.
look at the budget, it's not, we got 2 million to help, we got 2 million to help the budget, but from a year-to-year perspective, it was only 700,000.
Correct, if we look at just the ARPA fund.
Just
but
ARPA, just
as it
ARPA.
affects the general fund, we're gonna just look at the top row. That, because this is all being, none of this is in the capital budget. This is all just separate stuff in the ARPA fund. Does that make sense?
We would have still spent it. If they didn't pay for it, we would have had to fund it
Correct,
ourselves.
correct,
Okay.
yes. All right. All the questions on those funds done?
And you're right, Brian, and what we used it for, we didn't use it for like the operating, we tried
Right.
to offset it with the debt, like we talked about, right? So it's not a lot of towns are facing, they utilized it for operating costs, and now all of a sudden, they're behind the 8 ball, where they're 8 to 10% increases, because they're chasing the ARPA money, because they installed it into their operating.
In all in a single year. we use for that.
And any projects funded by ARPA, we tried really hard to make sure they were one-time uses.
So there was planning behind that, the way it lays out, yes.
All right. So then, we get to the general fund. And this is the fund balance, and you'll see this number on Exhibit 3 of the financial statements. This is a portion of the fund balance. Every time at the end of the year, we take the surplus, half goes into, we're not gonna touch it, fund balance, we're gonna grow that for our bond rating and for our cash flows. And half goes into fund balance for future appropriations. If we have to use it, we could take it from there. And it's, so that's the fund balance here, not the total, but just that allocation. And then what's gonna happen this year? Well, we think there's some increases. The tax collections, they're higher than what we had anticipated. The license and permits, we're projecting, these are all from the revenue projections that are as of February 27th or something.
So wait a minute, before I go back, that number up there is half the amount? The 184 is,
That's the whole
that's
amount.
the whole amount? So
That's-
half of that's gonna go to fund balance?
Nope, that's the whole amount that's sitting there that's
That we can use?
been, yes, that's been.
That's
it
gone
was-
through the policy?
Yeah, it's the half that's gone through the policy, so
The half of what?
2023, that's the half that sits, that's gone through the policy. 22, the half that's gone through the policy.
The half of what? The half of excess revenue for the fiscal year?
The excess revenue and, so it's the annual surplus and what, that's getting added. So it could be revenue or it could be expenses.
Fine, okay, fair enough.
Right, so then the 2.17 number that you're looking at now, is that half or is that whole?
That's half, let me get to it.
Thank you,
So,
sorry.
but wait a
No, that's
second,
whole,
wait.
that's whole, sorry.
No, that's what I'm saying.
That's
So
that's
this
the
is
whole,
where-
but
right.
here's where it divides in
Right.
half down here.
But go back, we had a $3.6 million surplus at 6/30/23?
That's cumulative, it's 23, 22, 21, and from whenever we started that policy, and I think we started that policy in year end 21.
Okay,
So it's 3 years worth.
3 years worth.
okay.
Um,
And we never allocated any of it?
We've not used any of it.
You've been saving that, Dan.
Yeah.
Okay.
You've been
'cause
using
it-
ARPA money,
Yeah.
because that
Yeah.
expires.
Okay.
So that was part of the plan, was to
Okay.
use the expiration money, and Marcia led that, is we were gonna use the money that was gonna expire, that we had to, along with the project money and everything else that we had to spend, and this would be down the road money.
And the only way that we would have used this is additional appropriations that aren't, that cause the budget to be out of balance. And the only additional appropriation we had was last year's excess revenue for capital as part of that whole budgeting scenario. So yeah, it's right there.
Good planning, good
So this is
planning.
why those docs make sense,
Yeah,
Dan.
good board.
Still make sense in this fiscal year.
And I had the budget wrong on that, so it's a lot cheaper than what we talked about last.
We all make mistakes.
All right, so the tax collections, and you'll see it, I'll either look at the selectmen's agenda or we're gonna send it to you shortly. The taxes we're projecting, just projecting 200,000 higher than the budget. Licenses and permits, 41,000 higher than the budget. Blight fines, we didn't have in at all, but we received 142 of blight fines, and we don't have it in here yet, but we may receive over another 100,000 in April if a property actually closes like it's
But
scheduled.
what's the offset on that? We have legal fees of 100,000 though, don't we, on that, to offset that?
Right now, the legal fees are all,
Well, pretty reasonable.
oh, someone's cell phone? Are you missing a cell phone?
Oh God, I think that is me. Let me see. It is.
Oh,
Thank you, guys.
So-
Thank you, David. So, this, right now, we think we can cover the legal fees with transfers and not touch the revenue.
So we were notified last week that 846 Federal Road is being sold on April 4th. It's transferring from the McCartys to the owner of the liquor store that's next door to it. So we will get those blight fines at the closing. And they're pretty significant.
State of Connecticut, the net, this is essentially, there's more money in LoCIP than what they were allocating at the time we did our budget, and more money in education cost sharing. And then this is the municipal revenue sharing, I just pulled that out because we think it's a one-time. Charges for services, that's really mostly town clerk stuff, is about 49,000 higher than the budget. Interest income, we've got our cash flow, same thing that we're doing with the budget, we have the cash flow for that. We think it's gonna be 1.4 over. And part of that is, again, the interest rates are higher than what we had budgeted for, and they stayed higher, and the cash flow from the school being delayed. We think it's gonna be under what we had budgeted, because we're not gonna count on the Kerma money until we actually get it. And then we put 200,000 in the budget. We put 200,000 in the budget, so we'd have to subtract that for something. We knew something would be over, but we didn't know where, how much. So we think we're adding 2.1 million of excess revenues this year. In this budget, we're using 1,127,000. The difference is about 960,000. I've got to include this over here, but the difference here is about 1.5 million, sorry. And so we have to take half of that. That's the fund balance policy where we're taking out half of the excess here. Those were all,
I think the policy is you take half of the excess and then you allocate it, so it shouldn't, isn't that the policy, and then you have that, am I misthinking that?
what we did last year was, we allocated it before the end of the year, and so it would come out, that would be more conservative.
Exactly.
That we allocated it before the end of the year. So if you look at the June 30th of 23 financial statements, that the fund balance, the additional appropriation for the 2024 capital is in the June 30th financial statements. And part of that is, the main reason is that budget, it's part of the bond resolution, and the bond resolution passes as soon as, it goes live as soon as the budget passes, versus the general fund, it doesn't go live until July 1st. So that money came out of last year. We had the addition, for the 2024 budget, we had the additional revenue in 2023 and the additional appropriation in 2023. Does that make sense?
Starting to.
So you've already utilized the half of that extra revenue into this current budget? The 1 million, correct? That's what I'm reading there.
So,
That one, down your arrow down, that number there is utilized in the budget already?
Yes.
correct, that's in the capital that we looked at earlier, that, and that would come out before the books close. So the half of fund balance is half of the fund balance after that. Because the 1 million would be considered an additional appropriation in 2024.
So,
This year.
Yes.
so now, and I know it's changing gears a little bit, but on your expense line, what's your projected savings? There's still more, you're not gonna overspend your budget, obviously.
We're not, but we've got the Board of Ed out there.
Right.
That,
I'm not pinning you to a number, I'm just saying, do we look that this number could still go in a positive direction
Oh,
for us?
absolutely.
Yeah,
That, we're not gonna overspend our budget, and we still have salt and sand that I'm not allowed to ask Ralph for until after April. That, if you look at that, we've never been this low on salt and sand in the last 5 years. It shows up on the expenditure report. That, but we may have to allocate some of that around. That,
But what this does is, the 200,000 for the docks though, now that we talked about, you've already allocated it into the budget. That 200,000 that we had, that we thought we were gonna utilize from excess revenue is being utilized for capital, and I understand that the process, but we now are 200,000 shy of whatever your number is, and I know you overestimated, you said, whatever that number is, we no longer have that in excess revenue.
It's in this number here, that we've considered it all in the budget.
Right.
The 1.1 is 103,000 for the docks and $1 million for other stuff.
Because we were gonna pay it ahead instead of, so basically it's
So
in
it's-
there, it's covered.
Instead of having a May 21st or whenever the referendum is, we were going to ask that you approve it
Mhm.
at
When you-
your next
I understand it
meeting.
now, it's already absorbed in that number.
Yeah.
We were just pulling it ahead so they could utilize it in the summer.
Right.
Correct. Both will be this fiscal year, but one is a few months before this, before.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, I got it now, thank you.
And then this number is the last number that I had at the Board of Ed, that they were projecting 492,000, and that's what she talked about last night at the Board of Selectmen's meeting. We would cover some of that with 411 of our contingency, but we'll be able to find more, I think, that, to cover that whole thing if it doesn't go down. But that, just the way the math works, that offsets this. So the net is here, half of it is 482. This adds up to 968 here.
So go back to the Board of Ed, quick. So that number last year was high at Christmas time and got driven down, but it was driven down by certain columns that were trending positive. Did they have any columns trending positive that each month was gaining traction? Because last year, like substitute line went from 200,000 in December to 450 in the end of the year. Is there something tracking positive that they presented to you, or is it this is where we're going to land because we have no positive traction anywhere?
It could go either way, is what she said last night, that, but last year, I think part of the positive traction was leaves and vacancies, that.
Right, that's what I mean. Is there any column that is showing positive?
They have not come to us and said, we see this trending this way. So I would say that that number right now is static, and we would leave it for planning purposes where it is.
Yeah, well, as long as I've been here, that number's crept up a little bit month by month. So I
It
think-
was at 700 at one point.
The 700 last year, and it ended at 390 something.
Well, it was
So
like
it came-
460-ish in
Yes.
November, so it's,
Yes.
haven't yet started to see this.
So what we're thinking is that our 1.8 million of fund balance, our best guess at this time right now of fund balance for future appropriations, that half that we're setting aside, our best guess is it's gonna be 2.3 million. And we're not using any of it in the budget this year. But that's saved for future years again to help us wean off of this debt bubble stuff.
What is our projected fund balance percent at 6/30/24?
I could look at that, but it would be whatever it is now, plus the other half of this 484.
Right, what's that as a percent? Is the percent going up or down?
I'll have to look, because I just don't
All
have
right,
it.
so, well, over the next, that'll be a number that we should look at.
Yep.
Marcia,
Over
you were
next
right,
week.
Marcia. It was only the leaves and vacancies. It went from 208 to 240, 262 to 340, to 373 to 447. But that was the only line that went positive.
So, the goal obviously should be, at a minimum, the percent stays static, ideally goes up,
Correct.
so.
And that's
that
what we
number-
did. We did those calculations last year, yes.
Exactly.
But that's easy enough, I guess.
Yep.
Right.
So that's what, this is a number that we have to pay attention to.
Correct.
On that drives that.
Correct. And we have to look at where we think we might end on our side of the budget,
Mhm.
that we're gonna be under, but how much under?
Okay.
All right, any other questions on, this?
Do we have this,
Yeah,
Can
we
you
did.
send
We
it?
did. I
we'll send
the
it.
new one?
You don't have the new one, I can
Okay.
forward that to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just do-
When you forward it, can you simplify this and make like the green column, just lay it out for the next 2 years, the total, start with the green highlighted, total that we have available, total we're using in this current year, total, just one line. I don't need to know the 17
All right,
lines. And the same thing for the orange and the same thing for the blue. So we can see the total, just the
By
simple.
category. Yes.
No, I don't even need category.
So you can
just
show it to anyone.
one row for each fund.
one row for each fund what we have now, where you're planning on, what year you're gonna put this bucket, or do we even have like a side bucket that's not allocated that we can
Okay.
work into?
And so there, we also have that 10-year model, that I can send you that as well, that,
Yeah, I just want it simple. I just want to be able to look at it simple.
And
if somebody
Your
asks you a
10-year
question-
model's good, and I appreciate it, and I'm not belittling it by no means.
Yep.
But this, I get a little lost in it when I'm trying to look at it as in, what are we using, and we've asked the questions, what are we using this year, what are we using next year, and what do we have? Because I think what I would like to see is, do we have 400,000 or 500,000 yet that becomes a tool that we can plan something around?
Mhm.
I don't know what's there yet. I don't know what your end number is.
okay.
Just to simplify.
I
I like it both.
I'd like the 10-year model too, because I think it's really important for us to look at, are we on track to get out through the debt bubble?
Okay.
Is, whatever, I can't even remember for the structure.
And I think I sent you the 10-year model with the.
You sent me the old, is it updated? I have an old
The
one.
updated one with the debt service fund, with the debt
Oh, okay.
service,
Got it.
I think I sent that, but I'll double check.
Because I just don't know if 2.3 is how close that is to get us through what we need to get through here.
While we're talking about receiving, Eileen said she had a little trouble with the Excel budget.
I was able to I opened it up in Chrome instead of Safari.
Oh, I
was
used
able to
Chrome, that's why I
download it.
opened.
Yeah, I couldn't get it in Safari, but.
Really?
Yeah.
We solved it.
All right. Any other questions on that?
That's
I'll
good.
I'll provide the details and the summary
Yeah, that'd be
and, okay. Other items to note, just things in the budget that you may not see unless you went through each of the pages. We wanted to just pull them out and highlight them for you. That this budget includes 14 days of early voting. That we have a grant for this year, the 2024 year, but it's a short early voting, and we'll need, right now it's projected at 19,800 in time for personnel, plus a little bit for supplies. We're waiting on the final rates for insurance. Dental insurance we should get at the end of the week. Workers' comp and liability, we should get at any time. And so this is our first year with cyber, so I'm not sure when we're gonna get that, but those are still all estimates. Although our workers' comp, no, one of those, the liability insurance can't go up more than 3%, so it's not like it's gonna be that wild of a card. The pension fund, we're still using the 2023 ADAC, because it was, the last valuation, the market was really high, and then it crashed, and you had talked last year with the RBAC that let's not drop that ADAC. We're still using the same, and we're just finalizing the census data now. I'm just reviewing it this week, that to send that in. So maybe by the time in April sometime before the budget passes, we can see what the ADAC, the payment that we've got to make on our pension would be for the 2026 year, and compare that, and the fire department, that we're working with them on salaries, and we'll bring that back when it's ready. We're also working with them on getting some of the data about the justification and the plan with the salaries, to have a full presentation. We're proposing that the fire department's bills be paid by the town directly. Right now, we pay them quarterly, and we think, and they agree, that it would go smoother if we paid the bills directly. One, it follows all our purchasing policies,
Absolutely.
that we can do purchase orders, and we can know upfront that, wait a minute, we don't have money in the budget for this. And right now, what we're learning is after the fact, that, because it's a year later, oh, we had to buy that, it was over budget. We could talk about it in real time, and,
Now, to be fair, we're not trying to tell the fire departments how to spend their money, but Marcia's team are experts at this, and they're having It takes them a lot of time to do this.
You
And
know,
they're
for
using
support on that.
volunteers.
Makes sense.
So we've had this discussion, and they're comfortable with this, and we think it will save them time, give us more consistent reporting, and give them more consistent information. So I think it's a win all the way around. And this is also part of the overall discussion we're gonna have about that study.
Dumb question, and I should know the answer, and I apologize. Are they the last department to roll in now to the purchasing, or do we have any other satellites out there?
We haven't talked to Candlewood formally about doing it with their stuff,
I mean, if we're gonna make it uniform, why not make it uniform?
correct.
We will.
We haven't talked to them about it, but we could, or we could roll them in next year, see how it goes this year, because we have to give them either access to Munis, or right now what we're doing is having them fill out a form, so.
However you want to manage it, I'm just saying we should be uniform. I
No,
mean,
no,
we should
yeah,
have-
I
the
think we want
satellites
everybody
get us in trouble.
doing it the
right?
same way.
Yeah.
But everybody else is involved. The library's not in with the purchasing.
Yep.
Everybody else, there's no other satellites out there.
That's
correct?
right. I had completely forgotten about that.
Correct.
We had, years ago, a bunch of different processes going on, and we're going, why do we have 4 different purchasing methods?
It's just-
We don't have the outside services like animal control, they're
No,
separate
no,
entities.
no,
but these are
I'm talking
separate.
our house.
In our house, this is it.
Yeah.
And when we do this, we're talking about the vendor payments, and not the employees. And what we talked about, and we're gonna have a MOU, written up if once they were checking with their membership, that, what we would do is they would keep their billings from the ambulance service. That would cover their costs for the payroll, and then we would true up quarterly, that if we owed them some money or if they owed us some money, that we would true that up. So we're just talking about the vendors at this point. The emergency management director is in here, that she is working on a grant or several grants that, but right now 100% of her costs, which are very small, are included in this budget.
So on that, we now have somebody who's full-time assigned, and the way we've done it, we can now apply for these grants. Previously, we couldn't, because we didn't qualify.
She's full-time
full-time
assigned, but not
assigned.
being paid full-time.
But not as
On call.
EMD, but the way it's been set up, we can now apply for this grant, where in past years we couldn't. And it'll help offset some of the costs. Not a huge grant, but.
It includes 7 months of Vail Road cell tower expense, we discussed that earlier. With respect to grounds, that in the past, they had been coming to the capital committee when they need crumbing and cleaning of the fields. And every field needs that every 2 to 3 years. I think crumbing is sometime and cleaning is, one is 3 years and one is 2 years, and we have 4 fields. And so Laura is working out a schedule to flatten that, so that if we can put that in the operating budget, and then it is maintenance, it's not capital, so we should take it out of that capital process. And so this budget includes that in operating. A few years ago, in the Mark Mulvaney years, that we were going to transfer some money to the Heart and Hypertension Fund, because it had a negative fund balance, and he asked that it be divided between current and to cover the deficit. And then we didn't end up having to do that because one of our recipients died and our liability went down. But now it's worked back up again, so we've added $20,000 to transfer internally to the Heart and Hypertension Fund, which is like a small self-insurance fund.
So for history, nobody is covered by this any longer, right?
Nobody knew. It would come
Nobody knew, but existing police officers are. So this will be a self-revolving fund once the last participant.
And right now, we only have one participant.
Yeah.
The Board of Ed was cut $575,000. $300,000 was special ed and health savings. And those health savings are when it went from Our original estimate was 7%, and then they said, oh, you could try to use 5%. So that was, the first step of health insurance savings. The electrical rates that Jules, the purchasing manager, has been working with them, getting updated electrical rates. It was up over, it was like 12 cents a kilowatt
14
hour.
cents. You guys did good on that.
The-
You did good work.
That I had nothing to do with it, Jules did, and I
Whoever did it did good work.
but he keeps meeting with them, both the current Constellation that we use and a broker, to get updated rates. And they're both saying to wait until the end of March before we lock it in, that, because after all the cold snaps, that we'll get the best rates. So just changing the rate saved $47,000 for the Board of Ed. They're using the most
They
current
were
rate.
using 11, then they went down to 9.88.
Yeah.
Just, that's the 47 when they used it. But, sorry, just to go back a little bit, and I just did, so Jules gets the credit. What happened was during the construction, they changed, the construction company held the electric bill and we paid it through the school. When they moved it from the construction company to the town side, it had a transfer period and it went to actual rates. And those actual rates were 14 cents a kilowatt hour. And Jules and Marcia's team were able to get under the umbrella back under the town where they reduced that 14 back down to our 8.5. So there was a good reduction in solid savings that took effort to negotiate with Eversource to have conversations. It's really saving us
Good job.
substantial money. So, I mean, we ride hard on people sometimes, but this was a job well done of
And if-
calling and staying on top of it.
Yeah, that was Jules and Casey's team. That, and there's still some work that Glenn brought up and Brian came in and talked about. And you guys have done a great deal of analysis on that as far as further electricity savings. That I know Glenn did an awful lot on this, and then on Monday, Brian came in and met with Casey and shared a schedule that might save another $60,000, and she just hasn't had the time to look at it yet unless she's responded today.
It's not a matter of savings.
It's just-
It's a
it's
matter of
overestimating.
just
Getting it right.
calculating.
Yeah.
Right.
That's all. This isn't, again, it's
Correct.
not a savings. This is just
Adjustments.
trying to get the right formula in place.
And then there's also, they call it the risk, that, but we have an allowance in there for salary savings, whether it's teacher turnover, where the new teacher is less expensive than the other one, and that's gone down, or whether it's leaves and vacancies, that for short-term subs, there is no savings. And so you'll see the budget's a little bit different this year for the Board of Ed, is that in the past, with the prior business manager over there, he knew the numbers and he didn't budget for all of the substitutes because he knew that there would be some savings from leaves and vacancies. But the proper way to do that, so people can see it, and I'm not gonna say he did it improper, that the way I would do it and the way Casey is doing it is the actual number for substitutes, short-term substitutes, is in the budget. That, and then there's money for leaves and vacancies as well. And she can divide it out between short-term substitutes and long-term substitutes. But in looking at that, Glenn was saying that it looks like it's too low, the allowance that's in there. And Brian came in and took that information, and the last quantification of that was, Brian was thinking it was 50 to 150,000. That possibly we could increase that by that amount. That and the hard part for the Board of Ed side is that these are all calculations. There's nothing that you can really pin the number to say, oh, here's where I see it in the accounting system. It's just, trying to find, here's what you budgeted, and here's, these 15 people turned over, and here's the calculations. So she's had the prior business manager in to help her find where his calculations were to quantify some of that. So there may be a potential for more of an adjustment there.
The problem on that line, if you look at just the generalities, and if I'm wrong, but is if this was in your department on the town side right now, there would be full control over those dollars on the town side. If you had one employee that left and that $100,000 worth of savings was in your line item, Steve would have control and be able to disperse it amongst the whole town. If we keep it on the school side, we have no control over those dollars. There is zero control other than the Board of Ed control over those dollars. And this is what we've worked 5 years to get rid of. We've worked since you and I sat across this table when you came on board, is to get these pockets of risk on our side, and we would field back. And this year's budget seems to have those risks added in on their side. And we're assuming the big risk of special ed, but we're not getting the benefit of the other risks on the other side. So it becomes a point of almost, do you say, you know what? Put back 100,000 and you take it all, including special ed risk, or you gotta come on board with us and take a little risk on your side, knowing you're not gonna be left out in the cold.
Yeah, let me comment on that, because not on the salary one, I spent an hour with Dr. Brill and Casey and Marcia, right? And, you know, we came at that from kind of 3 different angles, and one of the ways that I really explained it to them is what you've effectively done is put contingency in because you don't know. You can, I can say it 2 different ways, but and, you know, Dr. Brill asked me what my number is, which I didn't really want to give, because I was more of a consultant than a
Right.
you know, work bench member, but I think it's $150,000.
But this is what we've weeded out over the
Right,
years,
but-
not
but they
weeded
didn't-
out.
They didn't honestly
Understood
think
better,
of it that
yeah.
way, so I think that they've got to go back and look at it, and I've given them a little different way of looking at it, which should help them.
I will say it, because we're on it now, and I think we have a new business manager in there that's looking at it different than what Ken has. The new business manager is new. You're right, obviously, and she doesn't know the history that Ken had, which Marcia explained, like Ken knew this, and not even sure that Ken's numbers were all the way correct either, so I'm gonna, clarify. We've had those discussions in years, that's not talking out of school. But I think she's now trued it up, but we're trued up on the high side on things. She doesn't wanna make the error be low. And I understand that from a first-year person in the job, is you don't wanna be low. But somewhere in here, I think there's gotta be a little bit of adjustment.
Absolutely.
And I have to say that it's been a great exercise, that both sides now can tell you how many kilowatt hours we use for every one of our buildings, and our 40 different accounts that we have on our side, and so I think that that's good. We can model it a little bit better, that neither side had it in kilowatt hours before, so that's much better. That some of the things that are also going to, that I think are better, they did budget transfers in their budget. It wasn't at the meeting, but I think they approved them at the last meeting. That they haven't been doing budget transfers in years, because again, the prior business manager had it in his head, but now everyone can see, I think we're over here, I think we're under here, so I think we've got a
It makes
lot
for
of
better
improvement.
budgeting.
I
in the
agree.
future.
I think, and I'll agree with you, Marcia. I think the process has gotten better. I like the chewing up. I guess where I get lost is, for every year that we've been on this board, we've taken out this money, and at the end we start like we talked about. We're $700,000 in January. We get down to June, and we're $400,000. We make an adjustment. This year we're influxing $225,000 on the salary line. We're influxing $145,000 on the substitute line. We're dumping $500,000 into this jug, and we're not shaking out anything at the bottom. And that's where it seemed to. It's worked over 4 years that we've come within 2 years they didn't come to us for money. 2 years they had extra money. The last year where they needed money, I think Bob came to us for 3, whatever the number, the number probably better than I do, 3 and change.
Right.
And the year before was only a couple $100,000.
I just would like to say.
And we've influxed to $500,000.
Right. As we go through this process, even this year, the openness, the clarity, the discussions are more in depth, they are giving us anything we ask them for, to
Agreed.
understand what they're doing.
I-
That is a,
I guess,
we both know in the past, that was probably not as
And
clear
Glenn, let me just-
and as open as it was now.
That was the initial way it came out, and I said, you got the 225, you overran 225, you put that in, you overran 208, you put that in.
Right.
You saved 275 on leaves and vacancies, and you didn't flow any of that through. So you took the bad news and built it in, you took the good
Correct.
news, and so that was the first way. So I said, okay, some of that 275 might be one-off things that won't reoccur, or, you know, but at least 150 of it's good. So that's the first way to look at it. Then it's, okay, now talk about it the same way to continue. It's still the same number coming out from different.
That's
So
where my
they,
gut
I
went.
think they understood that. It's theirs to go look at and decide,
that's,
but,
And to
Ultimately,
that point-
ultimately, it's
And we're
ours.
just,
Well, but I mean, they
started the
should get the
discussions,
first-
I mean, we're not
Yeah.
making
but,
decisions.
but,
One
but
of
let's
them-
also be clear, these aren't cuts.
no, this is,
Moving money, so we're gonna cover these things,
Yeah.
we've talked about this, this is just reallocating,
Yeah.
right,
this is
on
money
that
that's
side.
just, right,
Getting more accurate.
it's money that's not needed, that if.
The electric bill is not a cut,
No.
the electric bill is an adjustment, kilowatt
So-
hours.
Yep.
Today's news was health insurance is now an additional savings?
So,
Adjustment?
on my notes, before you go further, I'm wrong on some of my notes, cause I got confused and I asked for something, I asked for the wrong thing and got what I asked for. So that's shame on me. What I think we need is the original superintendent's budget, a scorecard, right? Then we need their past budget, the one that the Board of Ed passed, with the changes highlighted, what did they change?
Oh.
Cause there's now there's 4 different times this budget has changed.
Right.
And we only have the board,
Yeah,
Right.
and that's, I asked for the wrong one, because I got Dr. Barill's, and some of those numbers were in Dr. Barill's, but they weren't in the approved budget, they were already weeded out. So when I went online in the book we got, I looked at the original proposal, and then we don't have, then the spreadsheet I got, I think was the approved budget. I don't have the reiteration from the superintendent's budget to the approved Board of Ed budget, to then the known changes that get you to that $300,000, and then to where do we stand
I
today
can
with
show it
the
to you right
new.
now.
no, we're not.
I'm just saying, I've got it, I've got it.
You
on
do
there.
have it?
Yes.
If you have it, we're
I've done
good.
it myself.
Oh, no, we need it from them.
So,
No,
we
no.
can get that easy enough.
Why don't you-
But you know what, I asked for the wrong thing, and that's where I messed up in my notes to everybody is, I went off the superintendent's budget.
Mm.
I didn't go off of the Board of Ed approved budget. And I know it changed only a little, but that's where that's where I got lost. But we need the superintendent's budget, the Board of Ed's past budget, the
It changes
$300,000 changes that we talked about at the meeting, and then changes that we know of today.
Yep.
Because that's gonna give us to a percentage of probably 5 and change, I think.
Yep.
And
It is.
we can get that, that,
And then that'll also tell us where Steve's cuts or whatever his number he put out there, where does that fall in line
Right.
with actual, you said 475 or
Right now, we're about
575.
475.
I'd like to see that
Yeah.
layout,
Okay.
right?
and we just have to remember, like ours, their budget workbooks, like what you have in those books there, tie out to the original budget, and neither one of us are updating them for when this cut happens.
Yeah, that's,
Agreed, that's why we need a scorecard though, because we get
Yep.
lost in the thing.
Yep,
If we
we
just
can
get
do
a, I don't even, or me personally, I just need to see where the changes were.
Just
Right.
kinda like we have on our side, with those 4 categories, we can do that.
What line items did you change and how did, and from what budget to what budget to what budget, or where are we at right
We
now?
can
That's
track
all.
And by saying we can do that, I can ask and they can do it.
Thank you.
All right, and then new this afternoon that 127,000 as the health insurance went from 5%. They said 2%, it's 2 something, it's their.
That's on the school side?
That's just
27.
the school side.
So again, the 575 adjustment, we had 300,000 and you're looking at another, it
We
hasn't even,
had 350, we had,
your
350.
475 can't include that 127 in adjustments.
no, we had 347,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And the health savings adds, brings it up to 447.
475.
475.
So the.
And I had said, right now, we're asking the schools to find 100,000.
But 60,000 of that might be in
electric.
electricity. So really, we're,
150 of it's in the salaries.
right, exactly.
yeah, so
Yeah,
we're,
so
we got a
might
lot
be-
of talks to have.
The cut that I made might be right on target
So it's
with the
100
actual changes they made,
Adjustments,
their adjustments.
yes.
So the
No
comment that they made and the comment that you made in your cover letter to us,
No,
that the budget they gave us was the perfect budget, and that we need to measure all of that with everything, and that we might not be able to give them back the perfect budget. Your 575
It's
is
still-
potentially, is better than perfect if you take the 150. So we're
With
right
the-
now, right
with
now,
the-
if we,
yep.
if we took your 575, they'd be getting better than a perfect budget.
Yes,
yep.
yes,
All right.
for discussion.
Yep, for discussion.
So those are things that are in there, we don't want to hide them, we want just to call them to your
Yep.
attention, they're just small changes. There's some proposed updates from new information that since the Board of Selectmen passed their budget. The telephone tax payments, we looked at that. The expenditures for health insurance on the town side, right now are 79,000 in savings. However, we'll wait till the end of the week, they're gonna give us a dental, so I'll change maybe a little bit. And then for those of you that are using the Excel spreadsheet, that on the front sheet, that I made one change, so I was thinking of Dan when this happened. On the summary sheet, that mill rates at the bottom, that when I did the 10-year, my mill rate, my percent change was different than my summary sheet, and that's because I didn't do an at-round feature. So I've put in an at-round for each of the mill rates to.
So they match.
So that if you're trying to match, what I have will be several, hundredths of a percent different because of that.
So wait, before you switch slide, so like on that revenue line, do we really wanna bump it from 48 to 70, or do we wanna bump it up 48 to 60 and leave some of that for that 200,000 Dan rule of pickup or whatever? I mean, are you truing up every revenue to the
And that
point
might decline a
of?
little bit from the
If we know
70.
exactly what the number is,
Okay,
we
I'm
have
good with
trued it
that.
up.
Okay, that's fair.
If you
All right.
want to,
Nope, you answered my question, thank you, you answered it. I just, if we're truing up every revenue, then that 200,000 is hard to achieve,
The ones that we know.
the one we know, okay.
And the 79.9, that's the town side.
79.9 is the town side, yes.
More than 200,000, right?
Yeah. Any questions on any of that?
So,
Start.
All right.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
actually have one question. The CIRMA rebate, we don't have a rebate contract. We have no clue what we're going to get.
So it's, I mean, I don't know, it's a participating type of an insurance, I don't know the exact name. But it depends on their, their fiscal year. So we don't, we assume we're, you know, it's always helpful when we get something that,
Yeah.
Karma-
but
But it's not
Yeah.
predictable.
Karma is a
Right.
mutual insurance company
Okay.
owned by the policyholders. So, like I have State Farm. State Farm is a mutual insurance company, though they never give you money back to once $5. But as a mutual insurance company, if their loss experiences are significantly below their premiums and the amount they want to put in their reserves, their general fund, they distribute that back to their policyholders. Some years it could be zero. It has been, what, 70,000 one year. It depends on their experience. So it's a number that can go all over. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So Brian, to clarify a couple of things, we peaked this year in our debt, outstanding debt. We peak at 129 million,
Okay.
and it goes down $8 million roughly every year going down. If you take the schedule that I have from last year, it should have changed, I would assume. So like,
A little like
We
that
peaked at-
service peak. This
outstanding
year?
debt is 129 million this year. Then down in 2025, it goes to 121, in 2026, it goes to 113, in 2027, it goes to 104. Roughly $7 to $8 million chunks it will decrease. So we're peaked, this current budget that we're in right now, we're peaking. And then it's gonna go down about 8 million
But I would say
outstanding
that
debt.
you'd expect the debt service to peak maybe in this year. I thought it was gonna go up one more
The
year.
debt service doesn't peak until 2027, or
This is
2026.
still
2 million, 2.88 million, and then it goes down to 276,247.
That's the principal or the interest? That's too little to be the whole.
It's right here.
And then it does go up a little
Yeah,
bit, there's a
it does.
little debt hump.
Oh, you're just on the town.
There's a little blip in 27.
Okay, but over total, we've got a, so it does, 25 is kind of peaks in aggregate, okay. So we gotta handle $1 million increase in the next year.
Right,
And
that's
then
what
after
you-
that, we're kind of.
Right, that's the piece.
But that's what you wanted to know,
Yeah,
right?
that's exactly what I want to know, thank you.
Yeah. All right. I know you're gonna be on, hold on one second. There's two things on the revenue that I wanna ask about. Iroquois. I mean, we're now talking 18 months out, right? So is it gonna happen in the next budget? Anything coming from
I
Iroquois?
don't think it's gonna happen in the next budget. That's my opinion. It takes them, their construction schedule is at best 18 months, from what they told me the last time I spoke to them. They have not gotten the final approvals. The federal government has passed some of the approvals that the federal government normally keeps to the state. The state is still working with Iroquois. They do not have their final approvals. So we're talking something after 18 months, I think. Now, remember when we talked about this, they were originally gonna be up and running end of '24.
Yeah, that's
October,
why I'm
November
asking the
24.
question, yeah.
They are well behind that.
So there's no impact on this proposed budget?
Not this one. I wouldn't put a penny in on Iroquois for this one.
Because it would have had to have been in the October 1 grand list.
Perfect, that's all, I know we talked about it, I just wanna make sure. And we're already spending this cell phone tower grant that we're getting, we spent it last night at your Board of Selectmen meeting, that we have this $1 million coming in, and we're gonna spend $90,000 a year for the next 10 years. Where does that grant stand? And is it free money?
This was Johanna Hayes's office put through a grant to the federal government for $963,000. There was an opportunity to pass it in October. When I took office in December, I spoke to her office. Actually, I spoke to Johanna real quickly. She said, I'll get you the number, right? The number's right, 963. The federal government is sitting on the overall complete budget. They had an opportunity to pass it in January, that passed. They had an opportunity in February, did not happen. The third and last time, from what her office tells me, is March 17th, 18th. If they do not pass it by then, the entire slate gets wiped clean and they start all over. Now, I think Johanna would put us back in for 963, but it would then fall into next year's budget, which that's okay. If we are going to get it, whether it comes now or 9 months from now,
It's
I'm fine
irrelevant,
with that.
but we can't talk at your Board of Selectmen meetings about spending his money.
No, we
We
don't
did
have
last
that
night,
money.
we did last night in a way that it was presented that we're gonna have a bill of $90,000 and I have $1 million coming in and it's gonna wash. All those residents
Some-
heard,
Some
this is a wash.
people may speak that way. I don't believe you heard me say we're getting $1
No,
million.
I just wanna clarify this, this money is not guaranteed. This
Right
money
now?
cannot be spent as in part of covering anything
No,
at all.
And we also
No.
have to look at the bonding rules on that,
I agree, this is other stuff that, I'm just saying, last night's meeting, if you watched it, you heard $1 million is coming in and we can spend it 90,000 over 10
No.
years and,
I would disagree with that. I'm not comfortable at all taking that money and saying we can use it, or we can put it in next year's budget, or even the budget the year after. It's just too loose right now. Do I think it'll happen? Yes. Do I want to plan on when it's gonna happen? No.
and.
The federal government, this budget
Well-
is just,
Right, and what you're saying is we don't even know the rules of how we can spend it correctly,
Um,
correct?
Well, we took out a bond for $6
Correct.
million of radios. If they only cost us $5 million, we have to do something with that other million, which would be
we could
move into
reallocate
some-
it to other projects and in future bonding, do less bonding.
But it's all
right?
within the bond year, right? Isn't there some kind of rule there?
Yeah, it has to
Same
be
year.
within the bond year, but we could say, okay, the million from the 2024 budget, we're going to do, the selectmen can do a transfer of this bond to that bond, but we can't take $6 million of expenses and pay $6 million of bonding, and we can't make a profit on it, so,
This is what I'm trying to say, is we gotta be careful when we start talking about this $1 million grant for the
Very
public.
careful.
Because last night, if I was sitting Joe taxpayer, I'd be like, oh, we're getting $1 million, so this is a no-brainer. This is, you know,
We're hoping, we're staying on top of it, but the federal government is not passing these budgets. You can see even these emergency funding bills for Ukraine, Israel, all the other ones they have up there are sitting still. And they're not moving. The general budget is just not moving. Call your congressman, call your senator.
all right, let's go on the grounds. Thank you.
Come on down.
Come sit with us.
Come sit with us here. Rixie, thank you, Laura.
No, no problem. Thanks for having me. Alright. Well, actually I can see that one better. Alright, quick presentation. I know I don't want to take up too much of your time. I just wanted to at least show you, now that it's been a full year around the sun here, where we're at in Parks and Rec. So, ready to go. Our recreation accomplishments, we finally, if you haven't seen, we do have a website. So we are accepting more registrations because it's easier. People don't have to come within our work hours or mail in checks, which is nice. We also added more after school programming and had our very first musical, so that was a success. And then otherwise we're running our regular events, which we always have fun with, looking at new ways to improve, which I'll talk about in the future here. We were able to we used all of our seasonal staff to have a successful season of summer camp and lifeguarding. We had no shortages there, and are continuing to offer a wide range of programs for everyone. So this is a very long list, but this is just a list of parks accomplishments, and this really is a big testament to our grounds crew with all of the work that they've done, and it just shows you all of the projects that we continue to do. So we did have a Boy Scout project, or an Eagle Scout project, excuse me. I'm not sure if you've been to Cadigan Park now. They have a Gaga pit. I'm not sure if many people know what that is quite yet, but it's pretty fun.
Really?
You and the Java?
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Who's also one of our lifeguards, and was a big hit for summer camp. That was great. Another addition for our kids there. And I'm not sure if you want me to read through this whole list or.
Highlight what you want to highlight.
Okay. Of course, you see the pocket garden. That's always maintained. I think it's very nice. Every season they do a great job on it. The let's see, what's another good one? The Still River Greenway. They actually, I'm not sure if you've seen it. They recently cleared a lot of the overgrowth coming in and renovated the Grays Bridge baseball infield, which was had a lot of good feedback for that. So we're excited for this season to open up here. And we did something new this year. I'm sure you've probably heard through the grapevine, but we started to move to brine. So that was a really big success this year for the department. Helped save on actual granular salt, and especially at that new school, helped combat a lot of the issues that we were expecting to have. So being proactive and able to actually hit it before the storm to prevent that ice from coming, and working with the custodians to actually supply them with the materials and sprays. So we
And
were
the
able
new
to-
school is adding a significant amount of work on behalf of Parks and Rec because they have a lot more sidewalks to clear. And where the parking lot's gonna be set up, that's gonna be more difficult to do because it's islands, and it's all got plantings and stuff, and it's gonna take longer to do in the future. You agree?
Absolutely. Brand new track and field at the high school, that's a big one, and a lot of people are asking about the tennis courts. They hit the end of the season, so the weather got too cold to finish the surfacing, and it's still too cold right now. It has to be 50 degrees and higher for a full day and night for a week. So we're right now going to have temporary lines, and we will be finishing that project at the summertime at the end of the tennis season. So we
The
don't
goal
impact
for that is to get the teams to be able to play.
Mhm.
It's not a perfect solution, but we want the tennis teams to be able to play.
And have to say thanks to Greg Dombrowski for helping us with the steep grant we were awarded for the pickleball courts here at Town Hall, which we're looking to have in the summertime.
So can I just add on that?
Sure, yeah.
So we had 4 bidders on that, Went from 484,000, I think, up to 705,000. We met, we talked to the vendors, and a decision was made to go with Gordian. Gordian is a state-approved contractor that you do not have to go out to bid if you use Gordian. The state has negotiated all prices with them, so you could hire them. We've used them for a bathroom at the high school. They do very, very good work. And so, because Gordian gives us an all-in price, we do not have to go out for design and engineering, and then go out for bid for the courts based on that design and engineering. They do it all. That allows us, we're probably gonna have those pickleball courts installed this summer, not next summer.
Does that leave money for the other improvements?
For the bathrooms and stuff, yeah, we anticipate about $100,000 that we can use for the bathrooms and upgrade. And we're having that discussion right now. What do we want to do with those bathrooms? Do we want to create at least one unisex bathroom? These are things we should think about, all of those things. So Laura and her team are looking at that right now. But it'd be
So,
great if we could
are
get
we
those pickleball courts in.
Are you still within the budget then?
Still within the budget, well within the budget.
Good to go.
Sorry, I stole your
Oh
thunder.
gosh, no, you're fine. These are our numbers as well. I did not include, because it was really hard for me to tell with all of the rain, our concerts. As you know, I was very quickly coined the term the cancellation queen because of Mother Nature, but I told people I'm not going to cancel. But anyway, this summer will be great. I'm not going to think about rain on Fridays. But our ski club, our numbers are actually up for the basketball league, which was fantastic. The musical is Annie. That's more students than we had last year as well. And the one other one I wanted to highlight, this community skate was always very popular. We maxed at 275, so we were very close to that. And the magic show was the most amount of participants we've had, so that was pretty cool. Camp looks relatively the same. Voyager is always a little bit smaller. It's a travel camp for older kids, so that's what that looks like. And the rest are just our numbers for camp. But as you see, we do have a lot of interactions within our programs. Our numbers are still great, and still looking at expanding more programs and offerings. We just put out a needs assessment to the community, so you'll see that coming through. If you have any time, it takes 5 minutes. We'd love to hear everyone's feedback, just to see what programs other people might be looking for, where we might be falling flat in areas, and how we can become better for the department. And it's not just program, it's also recreational spaces as well. So hopefully we're meeting the needs of the pickleball people now. We'll see. All right, and key performance indicators. This was a new, from our new website. These were our facility rentals from this past year. So you can actually see, first one, PBSA has asked for 50 field requests. So that just means 50 field requests. It doesn't actually say how many hours it is, how many days. It's just that they asked for those many fields for this past year. And you'll see, of course, soccer club, Pop Warner, they're going to have a little bit more lacrosse. And even the CT Rush tournament, that was 17 fields, but that was just a 2-day tournament. They were just asking for that many days with that many fields. It was an interesting report, and certainly I can run it a little bit differently, but it's nice to see all of the rentals. Even you could see the community room was rented out 16 times this past summer, which is great. Usually birthday parties, bridal showers, and what have you. So our most popular one, and it's interesting, but just to give you an idea of how many fields are being used, how heavily they are being used with the.
So on that though, I see the numbers, but what's the percentages used? Like Brookfield Soccer Club, 766 field requests. What's the maximum
So
you
they're-
could put out there? I
That's
know
a
you're saying
good question.
it's could not an hour, it might be for the whole day, but I mean,
Yeah.
how much spare capacity do you have at any time?
Right, that's a good question. I mean, I just got an email from another organization asking for turf use, and I was like, I have pretty much 3 weeks until the season kicks off that you have specific dates, and that's it. So they're fully booked for the whole season, turf especially, but soccer club takes over this whole facility. There's not a field or really too much time where they're open, so they are heavily used. And with this information, I could certainly give you a better percentage in a report if you'd like that next time.
It would be
Don't knock
interesting-
yourself out, but.
It'd be interesting to see too, how many and I mean, that's coming from the different organizations, but how many
Sure.
people from each of those are being, like, how many of 766 field requests, how many kids is that playing soccer?
So that was another thing, because I was looking at our,
Interaction space.
exactly, and then I was
Yeah.
like, oh, because every division might have a different number per
Exactly.
team.
Yeah.
So now we do get all those rosters. I could certainly
That'd
put
be
something like
interesting
that
to see.
together.
The-
Yeah.
The reason I asked is Steve has reinitiated the capital committee and we got a lot of building blocks to put in there
Yeah.
along the way, like the police station, the library, and all of these things. If we have a known, like, shortfall on a field, it's not gonna get filled tomorrow.
Right.
But is this something that the capital committee can get an idea on when they start to look at projects?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So I have asked Laura and charged her with going to each of the organizations, lacrosse, soccer, baseball, everybody. How many participants have you had? How many did you have last year? What do you anticipate in the future to do that kind of planning? How many fields in your perfect world? It'll be 6,000, right? In your perfect world, what are the constraints you have now as a team or as a league, right? Now, the need for fields is insatiable. Just is.
If it's there, they'll be.
If we had 6 more soccer fields,
Oh yeah.
we'd have it used all day long. My concern here is that we want to make sure that we're equitable to each of the leagues. My personal consideration is, remember we lost a 90 and a 60-foot field at Huckleberry.
Baseball.
We need another 90. The plan was to get it built with the new school money. There's $289,000 that once the kids move from Wisconsin to the new school, they knock down the portables at Wisconsin and put a 90-foot field in there and a 60. Those have not been knocked down yet. We can't build the fields until they're knocked down yet. I've gone to NBC twice and asked them what's the plan, where, those should have been, in my opinion, knocked down last summer, right? I know the NBC is incredibly busy with CLES. So our thinking now is, okay, well, maybe we take that off their hands. We bring it back into the town. This is a project, demoing is not, a high, not a lot of risk in doing that. And then the town takes over. We need that 90-foot field. We only have one. We want our JV to be able to play. Or the high school, if the field at the high school gets mudded out, which it does sometimes. So that's, I think, a critical need, right? We do have less baseball players than we did 20 years ago. Their participation is down, but still, we have a minimum level we want to keep for them and for our teams.
Well, that's why it's hard to look at these numbers and see what the real need is. They're
Yeah.
numbers on a piece, and I agree, it's good, don't get me wrong, but it's hard to quantify what they mean.
I think the opportunity, right? And I don't know if there's revenue that we can,
Speak. Don't slow down, speak.
out of town, if we have room to allocate this field or that room for rent, and get some
This-
revenue.
You raise a really good question, and it brings us into a subject that Laura and I have talked about, and we're going to move forward with Parks and Rec Commission. Newtown now, every league, every team, every player, every season, there is a fee payable to Parks and Rec to maintain their fields. They have over $1 million in that. I think that's reasonable. It's $10 per kid per season. Some of the soccer kids are paying, I don't know, $400 or $500 a season. Eileen, you know this better than I do.
Yes.
So if we could start a fund that would start to maintain those fields, right? Not subject to the vagaries of budgets with the town, right? You could smooth out the maintenance and the operation of those fields and maybe buy new fields. I think we could use more fields across the board. Soccer, lacrosse, baseball, we just could. So we're going to be doing that. We're also creating memos of understanding with each of the leagues, what your responsibilities are, what our responsibilities are, who's going to do what, to whom and when. And so we're working on that process, and I think that will help us a lot, because we'll ask them, how many kids do you have in your league? In your perfect world, how many practices and how many games each season would you have, right? How many do you have now? Because we don't understand that fully. Are we agreed on that?
Do they want to host tournaments?
Yes.
Right, out of town, we take the revenue. For our own kids, we, you know,
Right.
it's a
And
facility.
I also have a concern, and I don't know how big a concern this is that we have these travel teams now that are kind of outside the leagues, that are run by, I think, parents, right? And some of them hire professional coaches, right? They're AAU teams and stuff, and I'm not sure, but if they're using our fields, my feeling is Brookfield teams, Brookfield kids come first. We want to know who's on your team. If it's 12 kids from Danbury and 2 kids from Brookfield, you're probably going to get a lower priority than a team with all Brookfield kids, right?
Yeah.
And that's
It's
what our new
changed a little bit.
policy
Am
is.
I saying
Yes.
that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the commission and I have been working on updating policies, and that's part of field scheduling. We take into consideration how many players are from Brookfield versus non-residents. We take into consideration if they're a 501c3, if they're already an established organization who we've been working with for several years. So there is a percentage, and if you are an outside tournament, there's a different fee. If you're an in-town tournament, there's another different fee.
Right.
So we've developed a complete new fee structure. We've been sending it to the town attorney, and it'll eventually go to the board of selectmen and have it approved. So it does have those fee structures built in, which is something that I couldn't put necessarily into a budget yet, and I know I have to work
Yeah,
with
we're
you
not,
too.
we're not there yet.
So once we're ready to go, then you'll probably see that next year.
Perfect.
Good.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Next slide.
Next slide. And then this is just your Still River Greenway. They have a trail census. I always think this is kind of cool, and I didn't have an opportunity to share it with you last year. So there are a lot of users. The top right corner shows you the hourly usage of it, and I just wanted you to see what is out there, because we're obviously investing into this. We're expanding it, and it is a lot of work, and I think a lot of people enjoy it. You know, we now have dog waste stations, another Eagle Scout project, so hopefully that helps with the issues of people not cleaning up after their animals, but yeah.
And if you go down on a Saturday afternoon, like last Saturday afternoon, every parking space in the Four Corners was taken.
Oh, yeah.
Every street parking space.
So that
And I think some of the parking spaces in people's businesses were taken
Yeah,
for people going on the Greenway.
yeah. And the next
It is
slide
incredible.
just
Good to
shows-
see, good to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just another chart, so that's kind of
It's
Crazy.
another look at it.
When we built the Greenway, I said to myself, oh, that's really nice. Do we want to spend that kind of money on a Greenway? I was kind of iffy. I never would have believed the amount of people that use it and really enjoy it.
Yeah.
I was wrong. I was just dead wrong on
It's
that.
awesome.
My kid rides her bike from Town Hall here and to Peach Wave and back
Yeah.
in the summertime. She gets dropped off down here, she goes
Yeah.
for a bike ride, gets her
It's
treats.
nice and safe,
Yeah.
she's barely on a real
Yes,
string of cars.
Yeah, and the hope is to
beautiful.
connect them all the way to
Yeah.
Norwalk, so we'll see. That would be a pretty cool.
Hopefully, that with that grant.
More
we'll see.
programming options. So our goals for next year, as you know, the pickleball courts are coming in, so we're hoping that it'll actually be even done by the next fiscal. Increasing our hours of camp we talked about. We have kind of odd hours for summer camp for a working family, so we looked at getting rid of a half-day option. Like, it could still be an option, but extending for the younger kids. It's only been a half day. And also looking at extending hours for extended care. So keeping your traditional hours and adding a little extra of a fee if you want to have them until 5 or 6. That's just something we have to figure out staffing wise. And also a before care option. I think it's just a need at this point, and it would increase our numbers. And replacing our town hall staircase and Cadigan Park. That's just been on hold due to the weather, but expect those coming soon. And the library patio will also be redone as soon as the weather gets nicer here. So as far as the track renovations at Cadigan Park, we still have money in the capital for it. We just haven't gotten to that part yet. They've been filling in some potholes, but we do have some funding for it. I'm hoping to, as you see at the bottom, there's a lot of grants out there. This is my last semester of school, and I am currently taking a grant writing class. So I am taking all of those as opportunities to submit work that we can actually use here in town. So I've been trying to double dip a little bit and be a little proactive in getting some funding in that regard.
Cool.
So can
Thank you.
save some money that way, yes. And then, of course, expanding our events and program offerings. We are gonna have a townwide tag sale in May, so if you wanna get rid of any garbage around your house, let us know.
Can you
Everyone
arrange-
else likes,
Can you
you know,
arrange to have it
someone
picked up?
else's.
I got a whole garage full.
There you go, open your garage.
I have a whole
Yeah,
garage.
you can
full.
register your house or you can come here and do a plot. So that'll be the idea.
Oh.
So I would like to discuss one thing that we've been discussing, it's still early stages, the docks.
Yeah.
Laura came to me the week before last and said, you know, we're looking at the docks, we've got the approval from you guys to look at it, get some quotes, get some bids, right, we still have to go through the approval process, that's okay. One of the things Laura told me is that we use those docks primarily for our swim team. That's where the lanes are.
Muskrats.
Last year, we had 12 kids on our swim team. It's gone down substantially. And you have coordinated with the Y for a lot of our players. So Laura's suggestion to me, and I said, pursue it, we need to flesh this out, is to put docks there on the right side as you're looking at the water for boats. The boat docks in.
Revenue source.
You would get revenue. You would get,
I like it already.
The neighbors next door are
revenue
over
source.
$3,000 for a boat slip. So,
we can get probably 40 slips in there.
Is there any issue though with water quality next to the town beach?
You know, here's the other problem, and this is a problem. How many days were we closed, the beach closed last year?
almost half the season.
Half the
Because
season.
of so our health policy is 24 hours of rain, we're closed for the day. Or, I'm sorry, 1 inch of rain is closed for 24 hours. 2 inches of rain, we're closed for 72 hours. We also had to close just because of regular E. coli spikes on a nice sunny day. You never really know. We're kind of in an odd area in the lake where we close a lot. Again,
It's a
cancellation
cool-
queen. So,
We also,
um,
we get the geese,
yeah.
and the E. coli comes from, and it's been a problem, and I think it's gonna continue to be a problem. And this is something I think we should consider. It would be a
So,
big
what would cost?
change
Yeah.
for the town
We
beach.
swim there.
You know,
Have,
about
boats there.
25% of the beach where the docks are now for the swim team would be boat docks. We're thinking 2 docks with a walk path that comes out from the existing dock. So you walk across and then go out to your boat. That would leave at least 2/3 of the beach still open for swimming and stuff. But I think we should get some feedback from the public. It's a big change, right? And I think some people would object. I don't want boats with their greasy, oily motors near the swim beach, and I think that's probably a reasonable concern, but there
I think
are a
you
lot
gotta
of
talk
boats in
to
that little
The legal
inlet.
too. What if someone's drinking and drives into the beach?
Yeah.
No, I'm not being an
No.
idiot. People drink
No.
and drive on that lake all the time.
They do.
What is
Sure.
our liability on
We-
something like that?
We will have to look at that too. So we're looking at that on an overall basis to see if this is something we think is something the town wants or doesn't want. Because when we're gonna spend this amount of money on docks, they're primarily for the swim team. Am I saying that correctly?
They are only for the swim team.
They're only for the swim team to swim.
They
And
don't
we have
swim
12
for them.
swimmers. When my kids were doing it, there were 60, 70 kids on the swim team.
And the Y is the primary, right? Everybody goes to
The
the
Y is
Y.
very,
Yeah.
very
Yeah, but
popular
it's,
now.
it's not affordable.
And
Oh,
The-
with
the
the
swim-
beaches
swimming
being
pool.
closed so
The beach
often,
pass
I
is
think
also-
parents are
it's not like
reluctant to bring their
78
kids there.
bucks? The beach pass?
For a family, it's
Perfect.
like a.
What's the beach pass for our son?
160.
See?
Yeah.
So
But
it's
we
not
will-
as if it's like free, right? We are.
Yeah.
It's not. But if you are on the swim team, we give you the family pass anyway.
Yeah, the
just
whole
so that
family.
you don't have to worry about, if you want to take your lessons and then come have a picnic with your family and hang out, that's fine.
So we're thinking about that and talking about that. Parks and Rec Commission hasn't really, you've had
They're
a discussion with them.
Yeah.
I think they're in favor, but I think, I'd like your guys' opinion. I think we need to have a bigger discussion with the town, because it is a big change at Cadigan, right? It would be a big change. And the money's always nice and revenue's always nice, but then there's costs with that
And
associated.
liabilities, everything.
Is it the best thing, is it the right thing to do? Now, Brookfield Bay Marina is right next door. They have like 200 boats and docks.
When you have a public dock and it's got 40 slips, for the amount of people in this town that have boats, it's like a nightmare. Everybody wants one, you're on a waiting list for the next 10 years. It's a benefit for a very tiny amount of people.
I think the only way you would do that is by lottery. I think
We really
you,
wanna be in the business of.
you would
I'm
get-
in the business of being a-
for 40
Right.
slips, you'd probably get 300 applications,
Yeah.
especially if we were lower priced than
Sometimes
the other
too, it's like
arenas.
kayak canoe things, and they
That'd
rent
be
Like
those
day
out.
use.
No, we're
kind
thinking of
thing,
that
right?
too, putting up racks
you-
for,
Yeah.
You put a bunch of them and you rent it out $100 for the year, so people don't
Yep.
have to carry their kayaks and their
That-
cars.
that's-
Yeah.
Yeah, that's much
Yep.
different.
But that's, all right, we've done that. I don't, that's
That's
not
beyond our
for
pay grade.
tonight. Yeah, that's way beyond tonight's thing.
sorry.
Thank you, Laura. No, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no,
Do you
Thank
wanna
you.
talk about the new maintainer?
Yes.
Yep.
Thanks, Marcia.
You pulling up a sheet?
I'm trying to pull up a
My
sheet.
bullet list. So as you saw in our amazing park accomplishments for just this year, here's a list of all of the other additional areas that have been added on without an additional maintainer. The Pocket Garden, we now have 8 bus stations, and that might just, doesn't sound like a lot, but you have to go there daily to pick up garbage or remove snow or remove graffiti. So it's not just, oh, here it is, or you know, you gotta blow it out, wipe them down. I'm sorry?
I said you don't want them looking all dumpy either.
Right.
People drive by them and see,
Exactly.
you know.
So there is maintenance there. The elementary school, they now have garbages around the outside campus, so we're cleaning that up. We're blowing the mulch, the rubber mulch that keeps going on all the walkways. Of course, the regular maintenance of snow removal there as well. The new synthetic fields, we do need to have more maintenance on them. They're brand new. We would love for them to last the 20-year guarantee if we are able to keep up with them. So that's just more hours there. The athletic clubs, as you see, we have a lot of demand on our field, so there's a lot of work that has to be done to keep them usable. And we also are now, as you saw, our trails are being highly used, so there's a lot of trail maintenance that we have to keep up with. Now with the dog waste removals, there's a lot more trash pickup on those trails. We also are doing more maintenance on our equipment because we're using it more and more. There's also the factor of half of our staff, 2 out of the other 4, have been there for over 20 years. So they have about 5 weeks vacation time, along with sick and personal. So it's very hard to make everyone happy to be able to use all that time, but still maintain all of this. And that also includes our downtown area where they have all the hanging baskets, the flowers, and watering them 3 times a week, sometimes more, depending on how hot it is. So there's a lot to look in there, and what's happening now is we have our 4 maintainers and our foreman, and our foreman is essentially a maintainer at this point because we are struggling to keep up with the workload. So we're not able to have him do the job that he was hired for because he's now being pulled to be in the field constantly and picking up where the needs are. So him always pulling in overtime, he's pulling in about 20 extra hours of payroll of overtime, so it adds up. And
So your net difference is 40,000.
what's that?
Your net difference, your 58,000 you're asking for, but you're gonna offset that with 18.
Yes.
So it's a $40,000.
Plus benefits.
Yeah, okay. Which is what, 25% on the overall? That's how it
About 40,000, that is the old increase rate, but yeah.
All those
We don't
things
have
on
the
your bulleted
benefits in
list
the
are
budget.
like massive assets in our town. We need to do is maintain it. I mean, that's something that I think we've tried to do, is to provide the funds that help maintain the assets that we have. So I can see the need for that.
Anyone have a question on that? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Like Eileen said, I think the list is
We keep adding new work.
pretty
Yeah,
extensive.
if you're committing to reduce the overtime, so the budget is only the incremental, that's, sounds pretty
And there's
reasonable.
a lot more work, so, and I get the scheduling and you don't get a chance to delay a lot of this maintenance because it happens during the summer. Grass has got it, whatever's gotta happen, it's gonna
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
You can't say, oh, we'll get to it in 2 weeks.
Exactly. Or if there's a snowstorm and they want school open, y'all gotta get out there. No
Right.
one can
No,
be
I-
taking
I-
vacations and, you know.
I think that's self-explanatory.
Okay.
Anything else? Thank you for your time.
Great job.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a good rest of your night.
Yeah, it's gonna end pretty soon.
Okay.
Sorry to make you wait so long.
No, not a problem.
Fun.
Okay. Yeah, I learned a lot, you know,
There you
it's
go,
good.
that's the attitude.
So I think we covered a lot in the first night. I think a lot of points came up. What I would like to see, if possible for tomorrow night, Marcia, you're gonna hate me. And that's, sorry for that, I'll apologize now. Is, can we get an updated budget with the known changes? I don't need to see the Board of Ed's transitions for this exercise, but the Board of Ed final number with the adjustments. Right, so we know the health insurance brought it down, they have a number, they should know that number without a problem, they should have a number
Yeah.
now. You have it, can that go into this, and can you remove Steve's 575 out? Like the reverse, so we just see the natural numbers?
Yes, so they have,
So leave their budget the way it
No.
originally.
They're
No, I want
adjusted, but without your cut.
adjusted with the numbers that they know. Right
Oh.
now, strictly
Oh.
just the
But not
numbers
with your
they know.
575
Okay,
team.
I
That's
Just-
understand.
about
But they're-
100K higher than.
Yeah.
I
Right,
want,
right,
yeah,
right.
just the exercise though, I wanna see it so we can, and with your health benefit change and with your revenue changes that you know of. Cause you said you have known revenue
just
changes.
that one.
Okay. This way we see the natural budget
Yep, we can do that.
as
So
it lies.
we're gonna add back the 575 and take out the 450 or whatever it is.
Whatever it is, I
Right.
just, for me to visualize it, and I know I'm
Give me a
simplistic,
copy on the way out.
yeah, I just wanna make sure we're all on the same
We're all on the
page.
same page, I'm telling you, I've already got the new
Yeah,
number from
it's,
the Board of Ed.
stay with
Not
one
only for the
thing
meeting.
and then go back to it and make the changes.
I wanna see the natural budget, like Dan said, cause right now we're perfect. I wanna see, where do we stand right now with zero cuts, zero reductions, zero cuts, just naturalized numbers?
Mhm.
And where we land with the percentages. Because then it'll allow us to see exactly what can happen, what we can do, where we want to look at revenue. And then, all right, now you want to have anything for tomorrow? Is there anything you want to see? That you want to, because I like to start the first meeting off with things you want to need so they have time to get it to us. Is there anything, Brian, what do you want to see that you don't
Let me
have
think a minute,
already?
Let me think a minute.
All right.
Go around the rest of the.
Dan?
Tomorrow specifically is revenue, is that what we're doing tomorrow?
What's on our schedule tomorrow?
Technically it says, overview income and revenue, capital and debt, and then the people come, we kind of did a lot of that.
Alright, yeah, okay.
But, and we have land use, which will discuss planning and building, human services and public works.
Nothing that I haven't already said, I'm gonna be focused on, fund balancing type of.
Yeah, and that's a little different than the one, so we didn't have another presentation for overview. There was some confusion on the scheduling here. So we're thinking it's,
Just the-
land use planning, land use, just so you can meter, the, land use building, human services, public works is what we were thinking.
Do you have a
And
revised
general.
version of that, with the budget?
Yes.
Is it, or that you can send out?
Okay, so tomorrow, read tomorrow again one more time.
Okay, land use,
Yep.
and she's gonna discuss
That's tomorrow,
planning
yep.
and building,
Mhm.
human services and public works.
That's tomorrow night.
Mhm.
Okay.
I think that's another law.
Yeah,
We
and
had capital and
essentially,
debt, when are we gonna do capital and debt?
the, Pi Day.
2/14.
Oh, we're moving that out to 2/14.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then, yeah, if we can have that, Marcia, for at the end of the night, we'll go over it. We'll let the departments give us our thing, and then we'll close out with understanding the natural budget, where we stand. And then, Thursday night, what's Thursday?
We have fire marshal, library, police, and board of ed.
That's
That's a big
That's a
night.
big
What?
night. That's a big
Well,
night.
Fire marshal is
Vote
only
back
here,
in.
fire marshal is only here so you can meet him.
Yeah.
And,
8 o'clock, the Board of Ed's coming on.
Yeah.
That's the last thing. So 8 o'clock, we'll have an hour with the Board of Ed next.
Yeah, so fire marshal was 20 minutes, library was 20 minutes, police was a little longer than that, and then board of ed will be, if he's even 20 minutes, just to go.
And I get the library and police in that.
We have to, I gotta be at Marketplace at 9 o'clock. I gotta be sure.
So,
I'm booked.
the purpose of the fire marshal is just so you can meet him. His budget went down. He's not asking for any capital, there's no next priority forms, it's just a
Just
meeting.
Can he come tomorrow?
Pardon me?
Can he come tomorrow?
Can he come
I
tomorrow?
can ask him,
We can ask.
that
There you go.
there was a
Right.
reason why I moved him, but,
There you go.
okay.
It
10
won't be,
minutes is 10
wouldn't be on the
minutes.
agenda.
It's general
Oh, he's not.
discussion, general
Just throw it in
budget.
general discussion,
And
okay.
he's,
You
Uh,
have budget discussions in
Yeah.
there, that covers
it
pretty much
covers everything,
Okay.
yeah.
The library, I did suggest they didn't have to be here, but they wanted to, because I told them about you moving the money back to, into their name. And they wanted, but that was the big thing to discuss, so that, I don't know why there's big discussion there. They know that no more than 20 minutes. Police, there is more to discuss.
Okay. So I think to cover you, Mary, I think for just meeting the fire marshal, that's general budget discussions. We try to put a schedule out so anybody who's the town taxpayer that's interested in a certain department can come see that department. Like if people are interested in the library, they know they gotta show up this day. For someone like a meet and greet, putting him under general discussions is not gonna change
Okay,
anybody's.
so I don't have to revise the
No,
already
no
revised?
revisions, no, no, no.
Because this one's already
no-
been revised
I
at Board of
know.
Ed. Okay,
But
so
no
no
just-
revisions.
discussions includes anybody that,
Right, but
you're just trying
we're
to
not-
clarify for
we're
who's
not taking the
interested.
taxpayer's opportunity to come sit on it. He's just coming in and saying, hey, I'm fire marshal, nice to meet you, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Try and do the best with those
Yeah.
moving pieces.
Eileen, is there anything you
Maybe
wanna
some
see?
moving things.
Okay.
Mary, anything you wanna see?
I don't think we're off to a good start.
All right. I think we got a good feeling tonight. I think like what you highlighted, Marcia, on your bullet points, and Steve too as well, is basically the areas of concern. And that's what I try to tell Ron and Heat is, there, out of all those line items, it's really 20 key line items that are really gonna drive this whole process. We're not gonna get into the paper clips in the town clerk's office.
We didn't get on the EMS, that's because that's a big swinger.
We
Yeah,
wanna
that's-
have that discussion for sure.
But
Yeah.
EMS is.
So that'll be here, we'll have that discussion?
Yeah,
Okay.
on March
Yeah.
12th, we have Kenwood Fire, Center Fire, and EMS.
Yeah, that's gonna be
It's a week from
a longer
today.
discussion.
You've already had discussions,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
And we won't
We're
have
still-
the answers yet then, they're still waiting for a schedule from me, and I just haven't gotten to it yet. Just because we want to show their budget similar to, their payroll, similar to the way we do our payroll. Here was last year, here's this year, here's how it's built out, and I just said I would develop a model, and I haven't gotten it
You're
yet.
busy. All right. Anything else anybody wants? Steve, is there anything you want to talk about?
No, I'm just, anything you guys want, call us, we're here, send us an email. If you wanna stop by, we're here. We're here to give you as much information as you need to make the good decisions.
Marcia, do you have anything you want to,
Are we broadcasting still?
Yes.
Yeah. do you have anything you want to add, Marcia?
I don't,
You sure? There's nothing?
Last chance.
No, not a last chance, it's just speak your mind.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
all right, thank you. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And the way, I don't want to really show this electricity